Welcome to Books in the Freezer, a podcast dedicated to the deliciously disturbing world of horror fiction. I'm your host, Stephanie, and today I am joined by author, reviewer, and returning guest, Emily Hughes. And I think I'm going to die in this house because we are talking suburban horror today. So, Emily, welcome back.
Thank you for having me again. Always a pleasure.
I'm very excited to talk about this. This has been like an oft requested subject.
Yeah, I bet. It feels to me like one of those kind of foundational uh I don't even want to say subgenre because it's more of a like just kind of a general classification um of American horror and horror elsewhere, but like the suburbs are, an American kind of homegrown uh concept culturally, but I think that this, along with like haunted house stories, is one of those kind of like bedrock
Oh,
types
yeah.
of horror storytelling.
I think there's just such a fertile ground here. And you're right. Like, I think all the stories we're talking about and movies we're talking about are American, not to say that there aren't suburban horror stories elsewhere. Like, I think Natsuo Carino has a few, exploring like the teen angst and like Japanese suburbs. But
Mhm.
this is where we're experts.
Yeah.
This is our field of expertise is the American suburbs. And it's I feel like such a vital part of our history as a country. I'm obviously not going to get too deep in the weeds about it because I am not the person to go to for that. But I mean, after World War II with the GI Bill, a lot of soldiers were able to buy homes with no down payment, which then grew the middle class and, was this tangible step toward the American dream.
Right.
And,
With like big scare quotes around American Dream, of course.
and we had the idea of this like white picket fence. You have like a wife at home baking you a pie. But, like most things in American history, there was also racism involved. And
What?
I know, shocking. Like I think anything in American history, you like poke too hard and the veneer falls down, and it's like surprise, racism was here.
Right. I love it here. It's great. No notes.
So yeah, I mean, it's a big part of our history as a country, especially in the 20th century, I would say.
Yeah, and talk like yeah, the white flight of it all, with the development of the suburbs has is I think like a really like you said, it's really fertile ground for all of the themes that kind of come to bear in suburban horror. Suspicion and sort of conformity versus safety, and the isolation of that kind of paranoia. It's like, well, everyone has to be exactly like me, otherwise something is wrong.
We have the Red Scare too. Like,
Oh yeah. Oh
forgot
yeah.
about that.
Oh yeah,
you
that
have
one
to
too.
you have to suspect your neighbors.
Yeah, and then I think, as we've gotten into more recent, we'll get into this more later in the episode, but as we've gotten into more recent iterations of this area of horror storytelling, in the last 10 or 20 years, you start to see books that grapple with the racial aspect of this a little bit more. The one that comes to mind for me is Vincent Tirado's We Came to Welcome You, and just this idea of like, oh, I've moved into this like perfect little suburb and I've finally accomplished, the dream of home ownership and a place that's mine. And then, oh shit, actually, I have to worry about every single person who is in super close proximity to me, because they think that I specifically do not belong because of skin color or sexual orientation or religion or what have you. Yeah, it's a fun little pressure cooker of a setup.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we can talk about some movies that go through this, and I'm sure we'll get to some themes while we while we do that.
I mean, there's so many. Like, you sent over like the kind of brainstorm document, and I was just like, okay, I actually have to stop myself because this could just be 5 pages of movies and TV shows that deal with this concept.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, I think the first one that came to mind for me was Blue Velvet, just because there's that like iconic opening montage with like the really saturated colors, like this white picket fence with like really red roses and like a really blue sky.
Mhm.
Um, that's always stuck out to me. But that's the beginning of a montage, and there's like, firemen driving through this like quiet street, and it's super idyllic. And there's like a woman at home watching the violence on TV, like the news of like this violence happens elsewhere. Like we are safe here in our suburb where nothing bad happens. And,
Mhm.
you know, the movie and like a David Lynch in general, I think is very interested in the like, no, like bad things are happening here. It's not over there. It is in fact right here.
Yeah, it's like the wherever you go, there you are of human nature. Yeah, I mean, I think that the fact that the suburbs kind of exploded into like existence and our cultural consciousness in the era that they did, mid 20th century, just as horror storytelling was kind of coming into its own as a like contemporary, modern genre. It really does mean that those two go hand in hand. And I think, as I was brainstorming for this episode, I kept thinking, like, oh, like a lot of the examples I'm coming up with are from the like 60s, 70s, as people were kind of figuring. This is a half-formed thought. This is not an actual like thesis statement, but
That's me like all episodes. Go for it.
it's it's kind of like how folk horror in the UK had a lot of its sort of origin in the like back to the land kind of oh, I actually don't like the sort of acceptable mainstream lifestyle. I want to go, move out of the city and get, be close to nature and, live a more authentic life. And oh shit, things are actually really creepy here too, because there are also people in small towns, and humans are the real monsters. And I think there's some kind of parallel to that in American suburban horror. It's like, oh, I thought I got away from the dirty, evil inner city, only to find that, oh, yeah, again, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah. It's interesting to look at suburban horror too, because like I feel like it also depends on who the POV character is. Like, do we have like a teen angst, like I'm stuck in this suburban small town where everyone is the same and I don't want to be here. I gotta get out. Or is it from the like wife POV where we are stuck in this suburban prison, a la the Stepford Wives?
Hmm. Or the outsider who just moves to the
Yes.
community and has to
Hmm.
kind of figure out the politics and the risks and the threats, and who is like a safe person.
Yeah. Absolutely. I rewatched Safe. Have you seen that one with
No, I've
the
never seen it.
directed by Todd Haynes? It's a Julianne Moore movie. I want to say from like 1996. And it's not like a straight up suburban horror movie. I feel like there's honestly like two big halves to it, but it's set in the 80s, but it's this suburban housewife who lives in Southern California. And I just love the first half of the movie because there are just so many scenes about like how kind of empty and boring her life is. Like it's like her small in these like giant matching, very curated, perfect spaces. The movie is about her as she starts to have these weird allergic reactions. She believes it's an environmental illness. Like she says several times, like she thinks she's like allergic to like this modern world and like smog. And in like the second half of the movie, she finds this, it's not a commune, but it's like something similar to that with like other people who have like similar illnesses. And it's very interesting and it's a very like beautiful, striking movie. But I've always been struck by just the visuals in the first half, the like suburban horror part of it.
Yeah. I do love a Todd Haynes movie, and I
Yeah.
especially love a Todd Haynes movie with Julianne Moore, so
Oh,
this
they're a
is
they're
gotta
a
get to this one.
they're a team. Yeah, I really recommend it. And yeah, he brings out like such a interesting side of her because she does do like the baby voice where she's like, she drinks milk for like the and it's like a character thing where like that's her favorite thing. And she has a part where she's like, I'm a milkaholic.
Oh my god.
It's just
Horrible. Any like, oh, this character is drinking straight milk as an adult, and therefore that's how you know they're like there's something very wrong with them. I'm always a sucker for that very specific trope.
Yeah.
There's so many like foundational horror movies. Like I mean pretty much the whole like 70s 80s like slasher boom and teen horror boom is
Yeah.
suburban horror. I mean Halloween, Elm Street, Scream, like it's all like that is how this is set. And I think it really highlights that, you know, you're in a neighborhood, you're in a community, but you're still really isolated.
Yeah. I mean, I always think of Lori in Halloween, like screaming and crying for help, like banging on her neighbor's door, and you just see them like turn their lights off.
Yes. Oh my god, yeah. That is such a like an especially horrifying moment in a, you know, overall horrifying movie. But then I mean, I think Poltergeist for me is kind of the
Oh,
like
yeah.
apotheosis of this, because it is this like very like not subtle but, you know, robust, I'd say, metaphor about the American dream and the way that it's built over literally the graves
Oh, yeah.
of people who were here before you. And not, you know, I mean the thing that people misremember about Poltergeist is they're like, oh, it's an Indian burial ground. It's not. It's like just a regular cemetery. Not regular, but you know what I mean. um but I think there's that, like, I think the fact that people misremember it as like a native burial ground
Mhm.
speaks to that, like, oh, we're all sort of I mean, most people are kind of aware all the time, like there's that buried cognitive dissonance of like, this is the way that this land looks now, with these like pretty little houses and these green lawns and these, you know, dads out washing their cars on a Saturday or whatever. And then there's, you know, quite literally the bodies just a couple of feet below their feet. And it speaks to this kind of like legacy of violence and legacy of colonization that literally comes back to haunt you.
Yeah.
And I like that particular strain of suburban horror a lot, but there are a lot of ways that it can kind of play out. There's that sort of, you know, the past coming back to haunt you. There's the psychological horror of, let's say, Safe, or
Mhm.
Blue Velvet, or the suburbs episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I had to put that in there because when I hear that Charlie XCX song, that is the visual I get, is just Dennis losing his fucking mind
Yes.
in the suburbs. Newsflash, asshole. I've been hearing it the whole time.
It's so good. It's such a perfect encapsulation of this, like, oh, I moved into what I thought was going to be the dream, and it is in fact making me go out of my mind.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Or Arcadia, the X-Files episode with the like the planned community, the gated community.
Yeah.
And the like, if you violate the HOA rules, you know, the monster's gonna come kill you. Like, yeah, obviously a very gonzo example, like, you know, again, not subtle, but it really does kind of put it front and center. Like, here is the metaphor we're working with here.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of, I have it on the list, and I forgot to bring it up when you were talking about like outsiders coming into a suburb. Edward Scissorhands. You have that like beautiful pastel, like Tim Burton depiction of a suburbs, and then you have goth Edward Scissorhands with his scissor hands coming in here and shaking up the dynamics in this community.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Yeah, that sort of that isolation of like being the outsider is a fun, like, it's a fun element of this, and something I think that I always think of the Addams Family for this,
Oh yeah.
is like, oh, all of the nice normal families around, and then, you know, there's always one on every street, there's one in every neighborhood, you know, the weirdos at the end of the block. Which obviously, like, you know, it's a, that and Edward Scissorhands are like a more comic approach to this, because that's the thing, like, there are a lot of horrifying things about the suburbs, but there are also a lot of like overtly goofy and silly and like ridiculous things about the suburbs, and I think that that is one place where horror and humor go very much hand in hand.
Absolutely. I loved Donnie Darko as a teen because, like, I just feel like it's one of those, like, teen movies
Oh, for
that you,
sure.
like, watch it and you're like, "I like Donnie Darko. I like sophisticated, cool, hard to understand movies."
Yeah.
I was insufferable.
I mean, I think you and I are like exactly the same age, so we were in exactly the same place for that particular cultural moment. So, I see you is all
Thank
I'll say
you, thank
there.
you. I feel seen. But, you have Donnie who feels like out of place in this suburb, and you have this like, ridiculous religious like book banning villain, which thank God we don't have to deal with that anymore. Like
What
we've
a silly
completely vanquished
fictional,
that
yeah.
evil. No.
Ugh.
Um, who's beginning to doubt our dedication to sparkle motion.
Mhm. I'm always saying this. You know, I literally am.
And I mean there's the virgin suicides, which like I love and adore. You've seen that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Not for a long time. I'm due for a rewatch, but yeah.
Yeah. And I read the book after reading Middlesex. So I think I was more struck by like the very specific Detroit white flight because like in
Mhm.
Middlesex you're following like the family through several generations and they are like part of the white flight in Detroit to Grosse Pointe, Michigan. So then when I read Virgin Suicides I'm like, okay, like this is exactly where it's set and like I have the context for this story. But it is about this family that has, I'm going to say 4 or 5 daughters, the Lisbon sisters, and they have parents who shut them out, like don't let them experience things, are very strict and controlling. And the book itself and the movie is told like from the perspective of the neighborhood boys that are like observing and becoming obsessed with these girls who, spoiler alert, do all commit suicide.
Mhm.
Just this idea that like the parents are trying to control the setting to an extreme degree. Like they moved, they're a part of this white flight to like supposedly keep their children safe, but like children need to be alive and experience things and
Right, and figure stuff out for themselves.
figure stuff out for themselves, interact with different kinds of people that are not just their family.
Yeah, and then, you know, it's the sort of control versus rebellion
Yeah.
theme that I think crops up especially in like the teen suburban horror like sort of sub genre. You see this with Buffy too, actually, which was kind of a foundational example of this for me. Was the like, okay, yeah, she is a vampire slayer and she's out there, you know, engaging with the horrors of her like pretty little California town, and also her mother is trying so hard to, you know, exercise some measure of parental control and just utterly failing. But I also, you know, speaking of Detroit and white flight, I mean, look at It
Oh,
Follows.
yeah.
Very specifically as like a more explicitly horror incarnation of this concept in this setting, where these teenagers live in the Detroit suburbs, and the idea of going into the city is something that's like even remarked on in the dialogue. You know, one of the girls says, you know, my parents never used to let me go past like 8 Mile, and you know, I didn't really realize until recently how messed up that was. And the idea that like the only black faces you see in this movie are basically in the background. um and the idea that to access more information about this curse, this entity, they have to go into like the forbidden inner city. And I will say I don't think the movie really explores that kind of in the text, but I think it's a particularly interesting component of how that world is built.
Yeah.
It's sort of both real and unreal in kind of a very appealing way that's always stuck with me.
Yeah, I definitely don't think I caught on to that the first few times I watched it.
Fair enough. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff going on in there. And then
I
of
was too
course,
distracted by, like, the clamshell e-reader.
oh no,
Yeah,
seriously. I mean, I still want one of those.
I
Like
know.
every single time I see a meme that's like, you know, where is my clamshell e-reader? I'm like, no, but actually though.
For real, where is it?
And then of course there's Get Out, which
Yeah.
is the classic kind. I mean, I don't want to say it's classic now, even though it's less than 10 years old. um, but it is kind of the definitive, I would say, modern incarnation of like the suburban horror storyline told from a non-white perspective.
Yeah.
You know, this is the, oh, this like beautiful little neighborhood, and that, well, I mean, it's not, I guess they're a little more out there. You don't really see the neighbors, but they're sort of, I don't know, the white parents, you know, society of fucking weirdo psychopaths who come over for their weird little garden party. Like that's classic suburban horror. Um and the idea that, I mean, and the whole final sequence where you know, the main character has survived this house of horrors, he's fought his way out, he's having his like final showdown with Rose, and the police car pulls up and your
Oh
heart
my god.
just stops, and then you realize it's okay because it's his friend who's come to get him. But you know, that moment of like manipulating the viewer expectation in that way, just like, oh, there's nothing better, it's a perfect movie.
It is. It it truly is. And I mean, even in the I think it's the opening scene when we see the first guy get snatched, he is walking through a suburban town and he's like talking on the phone saying like, "Oh, I don't feel safe here."
Right, this is not a good place for me to be, and sure
Abs-
enough, it is not a good place
It
for
is
him to
not.
be. I'm due for a rewatch of that too.
Oh
It's
yeah.
been a few years.
Of like a newer one that came out. Of course, we have I Saw the TV Glow,
Mm-hmm.
which is so good. It's a new favorite. It is about how staying in the suburbs can stifle you
Yeah.
and like how you need to, get out to find out who you really are and get to explore that. I love this movie. It's become a comfort movie to me and it's
Mhm.
exploring nostalgia. So I don't know if it is like literally that they're watching this like nostalgic TV show at like different points in their life. I don't know if it's like the beautiful color grading. I don't know if it's like a mix of all of that, but it's just a fantastic movie.
Yeah, and it like an exploration of, I mean, as you say, like how staying in the suburbs, but in this case, the suburbs is like a state of mind too.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm
Mhm.
staying in my box that was prescribed for me.
Mhm.
And, you know, if I managed to step out of it, my whole life might be different, but then I would have to grapple with my whole life being different. Right. And I mean, I think we all know people who just never left.
Yeah.
You know, whether you yourself grew up in the suburbs or not, you know this type of person, this person who grew up in this milieu and like calcified and just
Yeah.
stayed. And the cautionary tale of how that can, I mean, kill you basically.
Yeah.
God, it's such a good movie. It's such a good movie. It makes me cry every time.
I
And
mean, I don't know.
speaking of people being our exact same age, I think Jane Shaneburn is like kind of our exact same age. So those cultural reference points and like
Yeah.
the pink opaque, the show in the movie is very Buffy coded, very like Xena coded. So all of those, you know, those shows that we kind of grew up on,
Mhm.
I don't know, it's that experience of like, and you know, I'm sure you've also experienced this of like, oh, the people making media, the people making movies, the people making TV, the people writing books, like there's a significant portion of them now who are like my age and my demographic, and they're writing pretty much for me, which is always a little strange to encounter, but you know, hits in a really resonant way.
It does, and I mean, I think you and I had to suffer through several years of, like, '80s nostalgia, so it kind of feels like it's, like, finally our time.
Yeah, God, speaking of 80s nostalgia, Stranger Things.
I read your post.
God,
Emily has thoughts.
I have so many thoughts,
I
and
love that you spiraled it into a series. You're like, "Actually, you know what? I There's too many thoughts for one post.
it
Stay
literally,
tuned."
I was trying to like cobble all these things into one essay, and I was like, this is going to be like 15,000 words. It has to be a series. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of for me the classic example of uh unexamined nostalgia as like a stand-in for having a point of view or an actual story to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, my thoughts on Stranger Things overall are not positive, but it is I mean, it fits squarely in this tradition. You know, Hawkins is supposed to be this idyllic town. And actually one of the posts is actually going to be about, okay, but nostalgia for who? You know, because this
Yeah.
is very explicitly like white male nostalgia. White straight male nostalgia.
Gen X at that too.
Yeah.
So even smaller.
Yeah, God. And you know, like I think about like Lucas, right, who is like the sole like black character in the main cast, until they kind of add his younger sister in the latter seasons. But like Lucas is just kind of expected to go along with like the stuff that his white friends like, and like we never actually get a sense of like who Lucas is independent of like this sort of dominant white pop culture. We never get an understanding of like what it is for Lucas to live in this like majority white town in the 80s. Like they kind of nod at racism in like the season with Billy, where you know he's really upset about Max hanging out with Luke. I'm getting super sidetracked here. Sorry, I could really like I'm
Yeah.
in the process of writing these, so they're very top of mind.
Well, isn't there the episode too where they do the group costume for Ghostbusters and it's just assumed
Yep.
who he's going to be?
Yep. Yep. And that's about as close as like we ever come to having a conversation about that in that show.
I'm also like almost done with my Mad Men rewatch. And it is interesting to see like where the suburbs play into that because like in the first few seasons, Dawn and Betty are living in the suburbs.
Hmm.
And I've been more interested in Betty this go around. But this idea that she's always had like one picture of what her life can look like and what like happiness and success can look like. And she is like forcing herself to be in this box and like will not admit that it is not making her happy in any
Hmm.
way to be a housewife in the suburbs with two kids.
Yeah. I mean that iconic image from the first season of her with the rifle in
Oh
her like
yeah.
nightgown with the cigarette in her mouth out in the backyard, just know, that sort of perfect encapsulation of like, hey, this sucks actually, but I can't say that or even admit it to myself.
Well, and then in Pete and Trudy, Pete has also been interesting to watch this season because I just went into it remembering that I hated him. And for the most part, I still do, but he has his moments. But just looking at him, like,
Not great, Bob.
not great, Bob. But just like, it didn't seem like it seems like he's just been forced into so many things by societal expectations and like external pressures because it didn't seem like he really wanted to get married. Like there's a conversation with Trudy in like the early episodes of season 1 where he says like, "Of course I love you. I'm giving up my life for you, aren't I?"
Oh God, yeah.
And then they get an apartment in the city and she wants to have a baby and he does not. And it's like several episodes where he's like, I'm not, I don't want to do this. I don't want to look into adoption. Like, I'm not interested in this. And then she wants to move to the suburbs and he, grew up in the city. So he's like, I don't see any problem with like raising a child in the city. Like, why do we need to go to the
Hmm.
suburbs? But it's just like, this is what the expectations are. You do A, you do B, you do C,
Yeah.
and you find happiness.
Well, also this idea I've been rewatching Billions, which is only tangentially related to the topic at hand, but there is an ongoing storyline where one of the male main characters, the hedge fund manager, splits from his wife and ends up moving back to Manhattan, where they had been living like out on Long Island. And even that, it's like this idea, it's very Mad Men coded too, this idea that moving to the suburbs and getting the house and the white picket fence is a sign of adulthood. It's you
Hmm.
growing up and maturing. Whereas moving back to the city or staying in the city is like sort of an arrested development indicator, like, oh, you're not ready to grow up. And like
Yeah.
I say this, like I lived in New York for 15 years, from age 18 to like age 33. So moving out of the city was definitely like, oh, I guess we're doing the adult thing, right? But and it's strange how pervasive that still is.
Hmm.
But then you get there and you realize, oh, like this is all of the same problems still exist here, they're
Yeah.
just organized a little differently.
Yeah. Definitely. And it is interesting, like, as a millennial generation, like we have not been able to take that step at the same time as like previous generations have because of the affordability of it all.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no,
So
I
it's just
my
been a completely different experience for us across the
totally.
board.
When my husband and I bought our first ever house in 2025, when we were 37. Like
Yeah.
that's just oh okay, yeah. Can't do this in your 20s anymore.
Which I mean, yeah, gets into kind of like the Amityville horror of it all too, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
The
or even
society, the
like
pressure to buy a house because it's what you got to do.
right. Or even I think about like The Conjuring where they can't sell the house cuz they spent all their money buying the house and there's no money to like go anywhere else.
Yep. The financial strap of it all.
Mhm.
Sometimes you got to buy a possessed slash murder house, because it's your only option.
Yes. Actually, I think one of the books that I brought came up with while I was brainstorming is very explicitly about that idea.
Oh, perfect. All right. Well, should we get into some books then?
Hell yes.
Okay. I wanted to start off with The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Keist, which I really loved. It's about this suburb called the Velkwood vicinity, and it's this essentially like paranormal marvel. Like 20 years ago, this block of homes essentially like disappeared, I guess, behind this like veil that no one could get through, like in or out of. Like it's like kind of like a
Right.
snow globe effect around this little suburban block.
Right. Under the dome slash
Yeah.
annihilation. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's right. Why didn't I think of those? Like, that's exactly it. And as if this happened in our world, obviously this would be the subject of fascination and documentaries and podcasts as it is in this world. You meet Talitha, who escaped this suburb. And she is approached by this like research team that wants to see if she can go back in. And they do convince her. So she goes there and she finds that she is able to go through the veil. And I love the way that it's described when she's in there, like the way like time is different and this place is stuck in time. There's kind of like a weird like time loop element. And they eventually bring in like her other friends that escaped, Brett and Grace, and they have to like go in together and confront the demons essentially that they had in the suburb. And it's about like, in order to move forward, you have to confront the past. You can't just like run away from it. And it is this like very literal, like I am physically here seeing this stuff, seeing the abuses, seeing what happened and coming to terms with it. And it's very dreamlike and liminal. It's very like Lynchian in that way. Um, but I absolutely loved it. It made me cry.
Oh, it's wonderful. And what I think is interesting too is that I think about the contrast between this and the Rust Maidens.
Mhm.
Her I don't know if it was her first novel, but her earlier novel,
Yeah.
which is a very similar set of kind of thematic concerns,
Yeah.
but it's set in Cleveland,
Yes.
in the 80s. But it's like it's a little bit of a okay, the here's how I think it would be a very interesting like critical essay to delve into the Rust Maidens and the Haunting of Velkwood and kind of compare and contrast that like urban versus suburban malaise and sort of societal haunting that takes place.
Yes. Absolutely. I would love to read that essay because I loved and deeply connected to both of these stories. And yeah, stories to where like, I'm sorry, this suburb could have killed me if I stayed. I
Mhm.
physically had to leave to survive. And especially in The Haunting of Elkwood to like explore who I really am.
Mhm.
And that's not something I could do here.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to go figure out who I am and what matters to me.
And I would say this is fridge level, very atmospheric. I would say it's a ghost story.
Yeah, she doesn't it's not that her stories aren't frightening, but they're not sort of acutely frightening. They're
Yeah.
more atmospherically. Atmospheric is a great word for it.
Yeah. And that is The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Keist.
I'm trying to I'm really struggling with like all the books I listed. I'm like, which one do I want to talk about first? But I think it's actually Ling Hun by Ai Jiang, which is a novella from a few years ago that I absolutely loved. Um, and it's the story of a town where there's a waiting list to get a house. Um, and the reason that there's a waiting list to get a house is that these houses are all haunted. And that's a selling point. The idea is that if you move into one of these houses, you will eventually be joined by the spirit of your lost loved ones. You can see them again. And the horrifying element of this is that people are so desperate to get in that there's a lottery system, and then there are people trying to kind of circumvent the lottery system. They're, functionally like voluntarily homeless, like camping out on the, on lawns and sidewalks in this town, trying to, make a connection with a family that might be selling their house, so you can like get an in. And the main character is a teenage girl, and her parents are almost like lost in, and they live in a house in this town, and they are lost in the grief of her younger brother who had died, and basically their whole life is centered around his ghost. And she is feeling so alienated and isolated by this, and that she ends up getting involved with the son of one of the families who are camping out. And it's just this beautiful, melancholy, like almost at George Saunders level. And that's like not a comparison I make lightly. Examination of sort of grief and like suspended animation um,
Yeah.
in the suburbs, and using this kind of like almost like Shirley Jackson inversion of the haunted house. I just think it's so clever. I think it's genuinely one of my favorite books of the past 10 years.
It was so interesting and inventive. I think when she gets into, yeah, like the lottery system, and that there's like kids at school who like don't have a lottery and just kind of like live outside and try to like look in through the windows, like there is this privilege
Yeah.
to getting to be there. And yeah, the it's so heartbreaking.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And again, a book that's eerie but not scary, I would say.
Mhm. Okay, my next pick is The Devil and Mrs. Davenport by Paulette Kennedy, which has one of my favorite covers. Like I just feel like it screams the suburban horror. It's like the very like mid-century ranch house with like a blue sunny sky, and it's like cracked in half. I'm like, perfect. But this is set in 1955 Missouri, and you are following Loretta, who is a housewife. And I think this really gets into how isolating an existence that was, and how she spends her days alone. Her husband is like an assistant professor at a Bible college, and there's a local girl who gets killed, and she begins to get these migraines and essentially these like visions that she like from beyond, and it keeps happening. But of course, like, who's going to believe you when you say that?
Hmm.
Her husband is obviously extremely dismissive of this. He's at this Bible college, so you have this like religious factor too, to where like obviously now she's the devil, and like you just kind of feel like she can't catch a break too, because like she can't go anywhere for help. Like the her neighbors are super hyper vigilant. They're like, who, where were you, who were you talking to? You're just like rooting for her, and it's like so cathartic when it finally gets to the end. You're like, thank fucking god. Like everyone. I think it rewards you as a reader, where you're like, thank you.
I really have
Like,
to pick this one up because it's one of those that has had this like real word of mouth campaign effect on me. But I mean, it sounds very Jacksonian, I guess.
yes.
Because I feel like going back to that idea of, suburban horror kind of growing up as like a foundational mode of American horror. I mean, Shirley Jackson. It's Shirley Jackson. And then, going on to Stephen King, Peter Straub, so many of those like sort of classic I would say 50s through 80s horror novels do engage with what it is like to live in the suburbs. And I mean, I'm using suburbs very loosely here. I think we both are. Suburbs used to have a very specific meaning, and now it's just anywhere that's not a city and not rural.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, you've got The Lottery, of course. You've got We Have Always Lived in the Castle, The Road Through the Wall, which was her first novel, Shirley Jackson's first novel, is entirely based on her own experience of growing up in the suburbs, and how sort of alienating and awful she clearly felt that was. Um, but then, yeah, I mean, you think about like The House Next Door, Anne Rivers Siddons, and there are I don't know, I feel like we kind of touched on this earlier, that there are these different modes of suburban horror, right? There's the psychological, there's the teenage sort of, oh, I'm an outcast. But I do think that sense of isolation, that sense of alienation is a common factor here. And so the next book that I want to talk about is Model Home by Rivers Solomon.
I haven't read this one, but I have heard like nothing but incredible things about it.
Oh, it is incredible, and it is so rough. It is so hard to read in so many ways, but like absolutely worthwhile. Um, it's the story of a the main character had grown up is the main character is black and has grown up in this relatively affluent family, and their parents had moved them and their sisters to like a gated community in, I believe it's Texas. Um, and bad things happened in that house. And so they're living abroad, and they get the news that their parents have died. And so they end up back in Texas with their daughter and their two sisters, and they have to kind of confront what happened in the house. But I think the most chilling scenes for me are when they're interacting with their neighbors, both in their childhood and in the present day. And it's a little hard to get into the details here without spoiling anything, because this is like a heavily psychological book, and it's written in a way that you have this kind of unbelievably transparent window into the main character's mental illness and trauma, and it's like probably one of the better representations of like complex PTSD I've ever read. But there's a scene where the main character ends up hooking up with sort of a conventional, like married, ostensibly straight white guy who lives in that neighborhood, like in his truck. And it becomes this kind of like, it becomes really, really freighted with like, what is going to happen? Is this character going to get out of here okay? Is this going to turn into a violent situation? And then the lingering question afterwards of like, is this guy from the neighborhood going to, cause a problem going forward? And then you learn more about the main character's experiences with the neighbors growing up. And that's where we really get into spoiler territory. But it is one of the most sort of just profoundly chilling books that I've read, that doesn't have sort of a ton of overt violence or a ton of overt, sort of like paranormal, events on the page. But it captures that isolation and that alienation in a way that I have just not been able to shake. It was one of my favorite books of, I think it was 2024 when it came out. Um, and it is haunting in every sense of the word.
Okay. I'm gonna read it.
Yeah, I would say check your trigger warnings on this if that's
Okay.
something that you need to, but yeah, it is well worth it.
I read The Stepford Wives like a few weeks ago for the first time.
Oh hell yeah.
And it is unfortunately so enraging and relevant and amazing.
Yeah. Ira Levin really two for two, Rosemary's Baby and The Stepford Wives, like really capturing both the suburban horror and the urban horror.
He just had his finger on the pulse. Like, I don't know. He was onto something. And it's one of those things, like, I feel like the premise for the Stepford Wives should be kind of like a silly thing. Like, oh, like, do you really not want your wife to have rights? Like, you just wish she was like a robot at home that just like did things for you. And I'm like, they do want that though.
Yes, but actually though.
I'm like, I understand that it's like crazy and silly, but like, it's not. But this is literally about a family that is moving from New York to the Connecticut suburb of Stepford. We're following Walter and Joanna as they like get settled in here into this community that has this men's organization. And Joanna is a big feminist, and she immediately takes issue with the fact that there's a men's organization but there's not a women's organization, or that like, you know, women can't join the men's organization. It can't just be like an organization, but you know, they seem to be an organization with power. And Walter joins because like, of course he has to, like he
Mhm.
has to like, you know, integrate into this suburb and the culture. And at first, like, you're not sure how to take Walter, at least in the book. I feel like in the movies, you just see them in their punchable face and you know what to think of them. but but in the book, he's like, "Oh no, like Joanna, I hear you. Like it is outdated and sexist and ridiculous, and like me and the other guys were talking about it and we agree it is. And how about this? Like I'll go for a few months and like suggest they make these changes, and if they don't, I promise I'll get out."
Sure,
So
sure, sure.
I knew that this was obviously a response because like of when it came out to like second wave feminism, but I didn't know it was as overt as it is in the book. Like in the book they talk about how there did used to be a women's association until one day Betty Friedan came to talk to them and like, you know, talked about um shoot, what was her book? The Woman's Mystique, The Feminine Mystique,
Feminine mystique,
the
yeah.
feminine mystique, and these housewives started pushing for more rights. And you know what, the men's association couldn't have that, so they shut it down and it became the Stepford we know today. So yeah, it is this kind of outlandish premise, outlandish in quotes, but going through it is interesting to see what types of things are a threat to the patriarchy. And in this case, like women having community with each other, women speaking to each other, women having hobbies or interests that are not something that benefits men. Like the Women's Association was taken down. These women are just doing housework all day long. And every time, like in the beginning, when Joanna is trying to like meet with women, they're like, I gotta wax my floors. I gotta do this. Like, you know how it is. It has to get done. Like these ideas that like women can't have a life because they're just constantly being bogged down with
Mhm.
physical labor and tasks and child rearing, and that is like an outside force keeping them isolated. And we meet Charmaine, who I love, who was like really fun and like loved astrology, and like she and her husband seemed fun, and she had a tennis court, you know, until she gets Stepforded and they like put a golf, you know, green over her tennis court.
Bastards.
Like she can't have that.
Well, I think it's an interesting kind of corollary to the theme of isolation that we've identified, which is isolation, brackets malicious, like isolation that someone else is deliberately engineering to keep you in your place.
Absolutely. Walter is just such a little bitch. Like I hate him.
Yes. Much like Guy in Rosemary's Baby. You're
Oh my
just like,
god, Ira Levin knows how to write like a shitty guy, like
seriously.
truly. Uh so the book doesn't go past like the final confrontation too much, where Joanna's kind of like, I know what you're doing and like I'm getting out. But Walter like gets away to make a call to the men's association and call for backup. And I was reading it like, you little bitch boy, you can't even handle your own wife by yourself. Like, are you kidding me? But it is interesting to look at that and look at the different iterations of like the Stepford Wives um, we've had. And it just has been these like insecure men that are threatened by their partner's ambition and success. I think the like 2007 one was like trying to do something different and interesting, but I didn't care for it.
It's kind of a don't mess with success situation.
And I watched Don't Worry Darling, and I don't I don't know why like I didn't connect with it because I feel like Olivia Wilde kind of diagnosed what our modern iteration of it is with like incels and like incel culture,
Mhm.
but it
And making
just
it like a
didn't.
digital.
Yeah, making it a
Yeah.
digital thing that it's like these insecure losers who have nothing and are very threatened by successful women that they will literally take them by force and want to rip them back into this world where like they were on top and knew their place, you know?
Mhm.
But it just like didn't hit for me. I don't know why. It just like
I
didn't quite work.
I never saw it, partially, I think, because I was so tired of the press cycle around that movie and all the, like, set drama with, like, Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles, and I was just like, I don't know." And then I just also heard it wasn't very good, so I never sought
Yeah.
it out. I don't know, I think it's hard to do, like, doing a modern update of a concept like The Stepford Wives is tricky because I mean, and this is kind of not to bring it back to Stranger Things, but like you're writing for a very different audience. You're writing for an audience with different expectations, with different media reference points. The way the Stepford Wives hit for the audience when it was written, we look at it now and we go, "Oh, I am reading this story and I am identifying all of the other more recent media that has also sort of tackled this, right?"
Yeah.
Um, but if you try to update it, you're trying to kind of play to the if you don't do it well, you're trying to play to the old audience and the new audience, and you're just talking to people with like different thematic interests and reference points. Again, this is kind of like a half-formed theory. So,
I don't know. You're onto something there.
okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Um, so I think if you're doing that, you really do kind of have to make it your own. And I just don't think, from what I know of Don't Worry Darling, I don't think that was achieved.
Yeah. So that is The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin, and I believe that was 1975? Question mark. Well,
Yeah, sounds right. So earlier I mentioned the idea that you buy a house and then you can't actually afford to leave it. And that is part of the premise of one of my picks today, which is The September House by Carissa Orlando.
oh yeah.
Yeah, which is a delightful book in so many ways. It's about a woman in like late middle age, with a daughter in her 20s, and the woman is living in this house that it becomes pretty clear, that she had kind of a poorer upbringing and was kind of bounced around between rentals, and finally, with her husband, bought this house, and it was her dream. It was security. It was her place, and nobody could take it away from her, except that it's haunted. And it's manageably haunted most of the year. And then September comes around and the walls start bleeding, as happens to so many of us. And it's told in first person, and sort of the catalyst for the story on the page is that the husband has disappeared, and it's unclear whether he has left of his own volition or something else has happened. But the main character's daughter comes home to try and figure out what's going on, but it is approaching September. And so the main character, who has tried to, hide this from her daughter, has to kind of try and manage the ghosts with whom she has like a pretty reliable relationship. She kind of, oh yeah, this is the ghost of the little boy who comes and like, trips the electrical outlets while I'm in the kitchen. And, I just have to speak to him sternly. And and then there's of course there's something in the basement that she just doesn't want to deal with, that you don't find out about until much later in the story. But the idea is like, this is my house, this is my safety, my castle, and I cannot afford under any circumstances to leave it, so I'm going to make it work. And the book turns out to be this like kind of, it's a debut novel, and I'm always so annoyed when a debut novel handles its thematic material this well, because I'm like, how dare you. um, but it's basically an allegory for how you stay in an abusive relationship and how you normalize it.
Yeah.
Which also really does tie into that suburban idea of anything could be happening behind the closed doors of like the house next to you. And she has a neighbor who comes over and hangs out, but like will not come into the house. So they kind of just like, sit on the front porch and talk about the state of things. So that kind of reinforces this idea that there are things that happen inside your house, and then there's things that happen outside your house, which is to say everything else. And those are just two different realms. One of the things I really loved about this book is the main character's voice, which is very accessible and a little wry and a little like you feel like you know this woman. It's just it's a great book. And there's a section of it towards the end. I thought that the author was going to go in a very like conventional storytelling direction, and then she kind of pulled the rug out from under me, and I was so relieved and delighted. I love when a book can do that. Yeah, I really can't recommend this one enough. I don't think it got enough attention when it came out. The September House by Carissa Orlando, and this one actually does get relatively scary, not like off the charts scary, but be warned if you're on the sensitive side.
I loved this book. I feel like I'm a very distractible person, but I was at like a hair salon and I forgot to bring my book and I was like, "Oh, I have this from NetGalley. I'll just like pull it up on my phone." I was like immediately like face in my phone, like entrenched in this story. And I do love the tone. The idea that it's like, oh, the faucet drips sometimes in the winter is like the same way we treat this. Like, oh, that's just the ghost that bothers me every time I do this.
Yes.
It's fine.
This
Here's what
is
you got to
the
do. You just have to tell them you're going to go find their bones and it'll be fine.
right. I have to go dig up his bones and rebury them, and then he'll be chill, like, oh, just one of those things you got to do.
Home ownership, you know how it is.
Yeah.
These old houses.
Yeah, I got to go flip that breaker in the basement again. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah. I was also thinking about kind of the combo of the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires and My Best Friend's Exorcism and How to Sell a Haunted House, which all take place in the Charleston suburbs. I don't know if How to Sell a Haunted House is in the same suburbs as the other two, but My Best Friend's Exorcism and Southern Book Club are set in the same suburbs at like different times. Southern Book Club's Guide was set in the 90s and it is about this group of moms who find solace in this like true crime book club and they find community, and then there's like you know an a shady person that moves into their suburb and like what's going on with that, and children start disappearing, but like they're not white children and they're not children that live in their suburbs, so like how involved should they be,
Mhm.
type of thing. And it's grappling with that a little bit. And I liken How to Sell a Haunted House, which is about this adult brother and sister duo that have to come back and clean out their late parents home, and it's about like confronting the sins of the past. And the previous generation didn't want to acknowledge certain things and just kind of like wallpaper over some stuff, and it won't go away unless you directly confront it and make peace with it.
Right. A la Poltergeist.
A la Poltergeist, a la, yeah, like the Haunting of Velkwood. You gotta just confront the sins of your past to move forward. Not the sins, but the pain of your past to
Mhm.
move forward.
Demons, excuse me,
Yeah,
demons brackets
yeah.
metaphorical and or literal.
Killer doll, it's a
You
lot.
know. Oh yeah, that's the killer doll in the basement. It's fine. I mean, I say this as someone who literally moved into a house that came with a cursed painting.
Oh my god, that's
So,
right. It's in the barn, or is it in your like main
oh
house?
no, it's in the house. That
Oh
seemed
boy.
safer. Keep her where I can see her. Yeah, no, that sort of like, yeah, the idea that you have to deal with what came before, which is like very literal in a lot of situations. It's like, oh, the previous owner did this repair and they did it, cheaply and poorly, and now it's my problem. Or, oh, the spirits of the people who were, mistreated in this house are, inescapable and I have to deal with it. And I think that's part of suburban horror too, right? Is the idea that even as isolating as it can be, you are still surrounded by other people and their problems will become your problems, like one way or another. Like you do
Yeah.
live in a society, for lack of a better phrase.
You're all in a shared Facebook group.
Oh God. Next door.
Which is my reality. No,
Yeah.
ours is a private Facebook group, and it's always like, whose dog is barking?
Oh my
You know, 3
God.
likes. And I'm like, where are you? I don't know.
Right. Well, I love getting on Nextdoor and like I don't know, Nextdoor for me is like, oh, this is where you go if you don't know how to use the internet. Because people will be like, I love getting on Nextdoor and people will be like, why am I seeing posts from towns I don't live in? And it's like, I don't know, man, check your settings, right? Like, I actually that I would love a Nextdoor horror novel. Like, I would love someone to do an experimental Nextdoor or like horror novel done entirely in Nextdoor posts.
Oh my gosh, it's needed.
Yeah,
That's the new iteration of the suburban horror
yeah.
novel. It's the
Or like
horrors.
the Ring camera horror novel, right? Like, where's
Oh
that?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's coming, I'm sure.
yeah.
My best friend's exorcism, I would say, doesn't delve into the suburban horror as much. Like Gretchen's parents are noted, like, 80s Reagan Republicans, and they are very concerned with like keeping up appearances. And so, when their daughter's best friend, who comes from like a poorer, rundown part of town, is telling them that their, wealthy daughter is possessed by a devil, they're not quite ready to
Hmm.
believe that for several reasons.
Right. That idea that you're isolated within your community, but you're also acting as though your community is like an impenetrable hole and outsiders are not welcome or not believed or not trusted. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you don't get to have it both ways. I think I want to talk about Comfort Me with Apples by Kat Valenti, which is also kind of an underread little
Mhm.
novella from a couple of years ago. And it is very much sort of a Stepford HOA, like gated community situation. But as it unfolds, and again, this is like one that's hard to talk about without spoiling the plot, but the main character is in this community and like things just aren't unfolding quite right. Like she's having some gaps in memory and the people around her are behaving a little strangely. And it unfolds. I mean, it's a completely gonzo ending once you realize what's happening. But it really reminded me of, I mean, Arcadia, that X-Files episode. It's really kind of that exact same setting. Um, have you read this one?
Yes.
Okay, okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like it is hard to talk about, but it's that idea of, okay, I'm in this community, but everyone else seems to know the rules already, and I don't,
Yeah.
is like a terrifying situation for me personally, just given my own anxieties.
Yeah, I remember feeling it and feeling like I was, like, in a bad dream. Like, it's one of those, like, yeah, everyone knows what's going on. I'm trying to kind of fumble my way through, but, like, everything I do is wrong.
Yep, yep, yep. Which is like, I mean, truly like my nightmare.
Yeah, I feel like Sarah Langan is good at this too, kind of like the dynamics of suburban horror, because she had Good Neighbors, which is literally in this isn't Long Island, it's, like, somewhere in New York, like a New York suburb. And this family moves in, and they don't quite fit the mold of like everyone else in this suburb. But like one of the neighbors on like at like a party, she gets a little drunk and like confesses something to her, and it immediately makes things tense between them, and that kind of like reverberates to the town. And Sarah Langan, I think something she does well in her novels is that they are these like domestic novels, but in this like greater like environmental horror. Like in this one, it's like in the future, and there's a lot of environmental issues, and there's a sinkhole, and the one neighbor's daughter like falls into the sinkhole, and it really becomes this like story of paranoia and like blaming.
Yeah. A book that just sort of raised back into my consciousness as we were talking about this was The Handyman Method,
Okay.
Nick Cutter and Andrew Sullivan.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like Black Mirror-y. It's a family who move into a house in a an unfinished like new community. Um and the husband goes down this rabbit hole of DIY like home repair videos. And he finds this channel, and he just starts to like descend into this psychological rabbit hole of this guy's home repair videos, and they get weirder and weirder and darker and darker, and he just kind of like spirals into madness. And then, of course, the whole thing, again, it's a Nick Cutter book, also has a pretty gonzo ending, in terms of literal buried secrets.
Yeah.
But it's a weird one.
It's that HGTV red pill pipeline.
Yeah, right. It's the suburban dad equivalent of like the wellness Instagram, influencer pipeline, like the mom's storyline from uh oh my god, I'm drawing a complete blank. Clay McLeod Chapman's last novel.
Wake up and open your eyes.
Thank you. I was
Yeah.
like, why can I not pull this title to mind right now? Yeah, that sort of like, I feel like that's an interesting modern uh approach to this type of storytelling, is the like, you have, okay, so you're living in the suburbs and you're isolated in all of these ways, and especially like, I mean, the drive towards um isolation in American society is like, it is a very real problem. But then you get these sort of like, okay, well, my whole life is online, and it's just so easy to get sucked down the rabbit hole of QAnon or conspiracy theories or like wellness. But I think that's a particularly kind of rich vein of how to tell this
Yeah,
story in a contemporary way that resonates.
absolutely. I was gonna say, I feel like, sorry, going back to Good Neighbors, I feel like she also did it. She went at it from an interesting angle too, in A Better World, if you've read that.
I have not read A Better World.
Okay. That one is again this like future where the environment is almost like unlivable, like the air quality is awful, and you are following like a doctor and her family who win the chance to live in this like essentially hermetically sealed suburb where like they have air purifiers, like everything is good here. So of course, like she takes this opportunity for her family's well-being, but like one, there's a lot of politics with like the HOA people in charge and like the things they need to do to remain in good standing, because like them even being there is always in jeopardy and like everything they have could be taken away. So it's like the social pressure of like where I stand and who I have to make happy and what I have to give up to do that. But then there's also this like very interesting kind of like modern folk horror element to it where there's like rituals that the town does. And like you have to be at the harvest festival. Everyone must be at the harvest festival.
Otherwise, the Harvest Festival will come to you. I love that. Did you watch Paradise?
No.
It's a TV show. The first season I think aired last year, but it's basically it's that it's a, a bubble, like a bunker basically after the apocalypse, where they've tried to recreate society as this like perfect white picket fence suburb, um except of course, the people who get chosen to come to a bunker like this are like the president and the billionaires and like the tech oligarchs and all of the attendant problems that come with that kind of like power grappling, and the control of information, and yeah, that omnipresent threat that like you could be cast out actually. But yeah, I love that mode of like the like post-apocalyptic suburban horror is like a micro genre.
Yeah. You don't want to get voted out of the bunker.
Oh, you really don't. You really don't. Yeah, but Sarah Langan really is like on this particular beat like no one else.
She really gets the social dynamics, I feel like, in this. like kind of bigger, like post-apocalyptic setting, she gets kind of like the, oh no, we can't make the HOA president unhappy. Like she nails that. I'm like, oh, it's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah, God, we've barely touched on HOAs in horror.
I know.
Oh my God. The true horror of the suburbs is the HOA.
Thank God I don't live somewhere with one because I could not.
Yeah, no, same. When we were looking for houses, I explicitly said to our realtor, I will not be living anywhere with an HOA because like the whole point of it for me is that I get to do what I want with my house and nobody gets to tell me, you can't paint it that color, right?
I think it's a generational difference because I feel like when I talk to older people, they're like, well, you wouldn't want your neighbor to paint their house some crazy color. And I'm like, why? It's not
Literally,
bothering me.
literally, what does it matter?
If
Well,
my
property
neighbor wants
values, like who
if my
cares?
neighbor wants to paint their house brat green, they can do that. I don't
Yes.
know.
And I can hang curtains if I don't like it.
I might have to like adjust my eyes when I go outside, but you know what? It's their house. They can do what they want. It doesn't bother me.
Yes. And personally, I think a little more color, both literal and figurative in the neighborhood is always a good thing.
Yeah. Like a little individuality. Let people do things.
Yes.
Let people live their lives.
Right. The world is on fire. Everything is terrible. Let people paint their house a weird color or like put a weird lawn ornament outside.
Yeah, going back to conformity and this sense of control that it gives people. And I don't know. I just don't feel like millennials care enough about that. At least I hope. At least that's my like very generous reading of my generation.
Yeah. I think the people, who have a mindset more like ours, shall we say, do tend to have that sort of like, well, what does conformity get me actually? Like, there's the idea kind of that the nail that sticks out is the nail that gets hammered down, right? But we live in a whole world of nails that stick out. I don't know. It's just, what's the point? Why, don't self-censor, I think. The world will try to do that enough as it is.
Should we talk about some chilling obsessions?
Absolutely.
So I took my son at his request to go see Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not the audience for it. It was not for me. But you know what? I was in a room full of like teenagers and like young kids who were like so excited to see a horror movie. And for my son, it was the movie of the year. And what has happened is he's got this like appetite for horror now. He's like, wait, I watched a horror movie and I liked it. Like, I liked the experience of being scared. And I think I'm ready to explore that more. Do you have any recommendations? And let me tell you, I have been waiting for this day. He's 11 years old.
Perfect.
And so we watched the first 3, like, Child's Play movies, and it was so fun to just kind of, like, go through and try to figure out what we should watch next and to see him, like, enjoy all of this stuff. It's been fun to,
Yeah.
like, try to, like, compile that list of, like, okay, what next?
I love that. I love doing that kind of calibration of like, okay, you liked this element of this, but not
Mhm.
that. So, okay, we're going to go in this direction. And that's so cool to be able to curate that for your kid.
Yeah.
What a gift.
I know. It's like, well, because like I feel like I've tried for several years and he just like had no interest. Where I'm like, we can watch like Goosebumps or we can watch like, like kind of like kid horror. And he was like, I don't like that. I don't like horror at all.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
I
so,
think, yeah, there's something about like growing up and like having an evolving relationship with media and art and figuring out what you like about it and what you don't and having like a new appreciation
oh
for
yeah, Miss Horror for Weenies. Yeah, that's right.
oh yeah, that, no, that is wonderful.
Yeah, so it's been really fun. If you guys have any suggestions for what an 11-year-old should watch, we'll get through it. Let me know.
I do not think an 11-year-old should probably watch the movie that I'm about to talk about for a number of reasons, but my chilling obsession is 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. I like the 28 Years Later was my absolute favorite movie of 2025. I think it is kind of miraculous for the third movie in a franchise to come out, years and years and years later and be that good and that weird and have that much individual vision from the writer and the filmmaker. Um, and I was a little nervous about the Bone Temple because, I mean, if you've seen 28 Years Later, you know that you think you're watching one movie, and then in the last 5 minutes, there are people, in tracksuits backflipping on screen, killing zombies, and you're like, what just happened? I thought I was watching this like contemplative movie about death and grief and growing up. Um,
You gotta have like the air horn break sometimes, like
right? And then okay, and like, okay, Bone Temple is going to be directed by Nia DaCosta, who is
oh,
wonderful,
okay.
but like was not, previously involved in the franchise. Um, I everything I was worried about, I had no reason to be worried about. This was a wonderful, wonderful movie. Um, it's disgusting. There is so much just absolute like grotesque gore. I mean, we've got like exposed brains on screen. We've got a bunch of flayings. Uh but it also I mean, I really do think that Rafe Fiennes' performance as Kelson is like a minor miracle, I want to say. Like, it's so sensitive and he takes it so seriously. I don't want to say he takes it seriously because that implies that it's like heavy and like, kind of sober, but like he's clearly having a lot of fun, especially in the Bone Temple, where I don't want to spoil this for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, but there's a set piece in the final act that is one of the most just batshit audacious things I have seen on screen in a minute. But you also get, Jack O'Connell as this like total sociopath who has been sort of stunted by the zombie apocalypse happening when he was 8 years old and having sort of formed this survivor mentality out of Teletubbies and, Jimmy Savile, who is not well known in the US, but in the UK, he was this sort of beloved entertainer until after his death it came out that he had sexually abused hundreds of people, including children. But that hadn't yet come out at the time that the zombie apocalypse happened in the story. So there are these kind of layers of like how we understand how this guy has formed his self-conception. And he's a total sociopath, like Satanist kind of, but he's also Jack O'Connell, so he's really funny and kind of, I don't know, between Sinners and this, like I think we have this new archetype of Jack O'Connell as like this fey little psychopath. um,
It's gonna get the Barry Keoghan treatment.
oh God, honestly, yeah. Barry Keoghan, if he didn't look like that, no shade, but he does look like that. Anyway, I loved this movie. It, I think, approaches profundity in a way that not a lot of contemporary horror is, and it also manages to grapple with like, I'm doing air quotes as I say this, but like the way we live now, without it being sort of too off-putting or cheesy. Beautiful movie. I would say it's going to be the movie to beat for me in 2026.
Might have already seen your favorite movie of the year.
It's crazy. It feels weird to make that declaration this early, but like,
I feel like when you know, you know.
yeah, yeah. And these movies have always like this whole franchise. It always felt very like tailor made for me,
Yeah.
like thematically, artistically, visually, like storytelling wise. I'm like, yeah, this is firing on all cylinders for like the things I want out of art. And I think, as I was leaving the theater, I said to my friend, like, I want weird art. Like right now in the fucking age of the LLM, I want art that is so weird that only a person could have made it. Like I want it to be idiosyncratic and I want it to have a point of view and I want it to be like about what it's like to be human for whatever value of that, it makes sense for a
Oh,
particular story. Um yeah, I just fantastic. I can't wait to see it again.
perfect. Absolutely second wanting weird art. And I think that goes hand in hand with my like David Lynch resurgence
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me.
Man was onto something there.
You'll just watch his either Twin Peaks or his movies and then be like, where's that coming from? But
Yeah.
you know what? Awesome. I love it.
Yep. The
I'm glad
best.
that we went for that.
We were lucky to have him.
We were. All right. Well, Emily, what is your final girl song?
I have a good one.
Ooh.
Drop Dead Gorgeous by Princess Nokia.
Okay. I don't know this one.
It's not, yeah, it's she's not a huge name, but and this was like a little bit under the radar from her album that came out last year, but it is a summer horror banger.
Okay.
It is it's full of like horror movie references, including like an A24 reference. But it's also like girly pop a little bit.
Oh my
Like
God.
it is basically, I discovered it in like early October and I was like, holy shit, like every Halloween playlist I have just got a major facelift.
Okay.
Just from this one song. It's
Well, now
great.
I need to find it.
Yeah, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.
Okay. It sounds like right up my alley. I'm obsessed already. Emily, where can people find you online and read your essays and see you?
Well, a few places. My website is readjumpscares.com. And that is where I compile my big lists of new releases of horror books, both yearly and monthly. You can also subscribe to my Patreon if, for instance, you want to hear more of my Stranger Things opinions. I will also be writing something about 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, and my thoughts on that. And on social media, and my Patreon is it's Read Jump Scares, same as the website. And then on social media, I'm Emily Hughes on Blue Sky and EMC Hughes 17 on Instagram.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and talking suburban horror.
Thank you for having me, and keep an eye on your neighbors.
Books in the Freezer is a bi-weekly podcast. We post episodes every other Tuesday. You can find us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Books in the Freezer, or send us an email at booksinthefreezer.com. If you would like to support the podcast, consider becoming a member of our Patreon community, where you can enjoy all kinds of rewards like early ad-free episodes before they hit the main feed, newsletters, bonus episodes, polls, early merch drops, and other things. So that is at patreon.com/booksinthefreezer. And that is where you will find our new series, The House at the End of Fear Street, where I am making my way through the Fear Street series with a guest. We just released an episode on The Knife, which takes place at Shadyside Hospital with Sonia from At Spooky Curious. And so keep your eyes peeled for First Date. It's a lot of fun. You won't want to miss it. Again, that is at patreon.com/booksinthefreezer. And if you're looking for a free way to support the podcast, I cannot stress enough the importance of word of mouth, sharing about the podcast on social media, post about it on your stories, comment on episode posts, leave comments on Spotify. Interacting is huge and it helps visibility, and that's really important to small indie projects like this. So thank you so much to those of you who have taken the time to do that. And of course, things like leaving a star rating on Spotify. And on Spotify, you don't have to write anything, or leaving a review on a site like Apple Podcasts. That just really helps visibility. I have been your host, Stephanie Gagne. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time on Books in the Freezer.